After 7 years of love, I discovered the heartbreaking truth of her cheating and betrayal, and how I left everything behind to begin rebuilding my life from scratch. My partner of nearly 7 years had sex with another man last year, and I suspect she has been emotionally and physically cheating on me for at least the past 6 months up until today. I discovered this last night and left a goodbye letter on the table this morning. I'm starting the process of figuring out who I am and how I can move forward from here. I'm writing this as a bit of a journaling exercise, and maybe for some support from people who have been through the same. We've been together since 2015, and early on, I planned for this to be a lifelong relationship. It was rocky along the way, and this is part of the reason I never managed to propose. However, there is still a very mature ring fund, which will go somewhere else now, I'm sure. Around 2019, I began to think that maybe our relationship was not going to be like how I had imagined it. We fought a lot, nothing physical of course, just disagreements, mutual pouting and discontent. Our sex life dropped off significantly after 2016 for medical reasons, and it never really seemed to recover. In June of last year, we had a deep and meaningful conversation where she said, in so many words, that I did not satisfy her. She had never been satisfied, and the thought of me in bed made her sick. It was very upsetting at the time, and in hindsight, I should have ended our relationship then. But we decided initially that we would try to work our way through our problems. We also ended up having a 4-month COVID-19 hard lockdown shortly afterward, so I didn't want to throw her onto the street or anything. Around September, I discovered she had been sexting some guy overseas, a total breach of trust. But I decided I would bracket it because there was nothing physical, and even though we never discussed it openly, I thought she knew that I knew. I never broached this directly, but we eventually decided we would go to couples therapy. I discovered yesterday that she slept with another man in November last year while she was out of town on a short holiday. Some random she met online, and I presume she had been chatting with for a few weeks at least. I didn't care to ask for the exact date, but it was either shortly before or shortly after our first couples therapy session. When she went to work today, I left a note on the table saying goodbye, packed a bag, and went to my parents' place for a few days. This evening, after she came home, we had an hour-long SMS-only discussion. I don't want to talk about it out loud. I can't put my words together in time to speak them. She took responsibility for everything, promised to change, and asked if I would come back. I appreciated her honesty. I believe everything she has said. This is completely unlike her, something she acknowledged, and she is afflicted by both mental illness and gruesome sexual trauma as a child and young adult. But I said that this was a hard barrier for me, and I would not consider coming back. Even if we continue to see couples therapy for this issue, I said I would consider going back to our therapist to work through the breakup process, as we had discussed this previously in one of our sessions, and I can see how it could be helpful. It is also something our therapist had worked on. Even if we could make our way past this, and she found a way to fix herself, it would always be a part of our past and something I will never be able to reconcile myself with while we were in a relationship. I don't fully believe that there has only been one other man. I asked how many other people she has had sex with during our relationship, and she said one, but I think this might have been a very strict definition of sex, and that she has been emotionally and physically cheating with several other men over at least the past 6 months, and even up until now. She said that this is part of her life which feels like it's without consequence, and although that is obviously wrong, I can understand what she is saying. Anyway, the number doesn't matter, one is one too many. I feel very dirty for how I found all this out, especially since I was going by a gut feeling. But I feel partially vindicated by my gut being right. I don't know if I can shake this feeling of shame for having been able to discover this, even though it is for the best that I know and that we separate. I will likely be moving my appointment with my own therapist forward a few weeks to help with where I go from here. I don't quite know how she moves on from this, but I'm trying my best to focus on myself. I don't know what I will do with myself yet because so much of who I am, what I do, and what I'm like revolves around what we were. I picked up my guitar for the first time in a few months and couldn't do much with it. I don't play as much now because I felt embarrassed playing around her. Not her fault, she was always very encouraging of all my creative pursuits. I have a few friends, but I'm both a very reserved person and also someone who gets lonely easily. I might need to house share because I don't know if living alone is a good idea for me right now. I did say that I hope we can be friends one day, and I really do. Besides the infidelity and our other problems, she's great, and we did gel in a very cool way. But in my heart of hearts, it doesn't seem likely at the very least as soon as either one of us starts seeing someone else, unless they're super chill. I don't think it's going to work. I've decided that I'm not going to be super candid with other people about the circumstances of our breakup. There's no need to be. But it's something that I would mention to a future partner, and I can imagine for them that it would be a bit weird for your partner to be friends with their ex who is also a cheater. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. She will likely move to another city, and we won't have much opportunity to see each other again anyway. Anyway, that's my story. There were times this morning when I thought I might try to just let it slide and forget about it, but I'm glad the part of me which stood fast won over because there was really no future knowing this. It would always eat at me. I don't know what the future holds, and I am truly scared because I have had struggles with alcohol and smoking in the past, which my partner really helped me to temper. I stopped smoking as a condition of getting together, which I'm grateful for, maybe with a sneaky cigarette every now and then at the pub, and I don't have that anymore. I have made a short list of things for me to try to do with myself for the next 4 weeks and have committed to not buying any spirits at all for now and only smoking if I've gone out and someone offers. I don't go out often, so this is generally sustainable for me. But as I sit here in my parents' guest room, the weight of that decision feels heavier than I expected. The room is familiar, same faded blue curtains, same creaky twin bed from my teenage years, but it's also alien. It's not my space anymore, and I'm not sure where my space is. The bag I packed this morning sits in the corner, half unzipped, with a couple of shirts spilling out. I haven't had the energy to unpack. It's only been a day, but the reality of starting over is sinking in, and it's messier than I thought it would be. I keep replaying the moment I left the note on the table. It was a single sheet of paper torn from a notebook, with just a few lines, "I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. I wish you the best." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. The act of writing it felt final, like closing a book I'd been reading for years but never finished. I stood there for a moment, staring at the table where we'd shared so many meals, arguments, and quiet mornings. Then I grabbed my keys and walked out. I didn't look back, but I wanted to. Part of me still does. The first thing I did when I got to my parents' place was call my therapist's office to move my appointment up. I left a voicemail, probably rambling too much, but they got back to me within the hour. I'm seeing her in 3 days, which feels like both an eternity and not enough time to process everything. I don't even know where to start when I sit down with her. Do I talk about the betrayal, the shame, the fact that I feel like I've lost a limb, but also like I've been set free? Maybe all of it. For now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. My parents have been kind but cautious. They know something's wrong, but I haven't told them the full story. I just said we broke up and I needed a place to crash for a bit. Mom keeps making me tea, and Dad keeps asking if I want to watch the game with him, like that's going to fix everything. I appreciate it, but it's hard to sit through their small talk when my mind is screaming. I don't want to unload on them. Not yet. They'd worry too much, and I'm not ready to see the pity in their eyes when they hear about the cheating. I've been thinking a lot about the past 7 years. It's strange how you can live with someone for so long and still feel like you never really knew them. We met in 2015 at a mutual friend's birthday party. She was wearing this bright yellow dress, and I remember thinking she looked like sunshine. We talked for hours that night about music, movies, our dreams. I was hooked. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. I think that's what made the betrayal sting so much. It wasn't just about the act, but about how she could give that same attention, that same intimacy to someone else. The early years were good, or at least I thought they were. We moved in together in 2017, got a little apartment with a leaky faucet and a view of a brick wall. We'd laugh about how we were living the dream. I was working as a graphic designer, and she was in marketing. We'd come home, cook dinner, watch bad reality TV. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I started saving for a ring in 2018, putting away a little each month. I wanted to do it right, get down on one knee, make her cry happy tears. But then the fight started, small at first, then bigger. By 2019, I was questioning everything. The ring fund kept growing, but the proposal never happened. Now I'm glad it didn't. I keep wondering when things went wrong. Was it the medical issues that tanked our sex life? The lockdown that trapped us together? Or was it always there, a crack in the foundation I didn't see? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. What I do know is that I ignored too many red flags. The late-night phone calls she'd take in the other room, the way she'd get defensive when I asked about her day, the gut feeling I had for months that something wasn't right. I told myself I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into things. Turns out I wasn't reading enough. Finding out about the cheating was like a punch to the chest. It wasn't just the act itself, but the deception. The lies she told to my face, the therapy sessions where she sat there and pretended to want to fix things. I found out by accident, going through her laptop to find a document we'd worked on together. There was an email, not even hidden, from some guy she'd met online. It was graphic, explicit, and dated from November. I felt sick. I kept digging, found more. Messages, photos, plans to meet up again. It was like watching my life unravel in real time. I confronted her last night, not in person but over text. I couldn't face her. I asked if it was true, if she'd slept with him, She didn't deny it. She said it was a mistake, that she was lost, that her trauma made her do it. I wanted to scream, but I just kept typing. I asked how many others. She swore it was just the one, but her words felt hollow. I don't believe her, not fully. Maybe I never will. Now, I'm trying to figure out who I am without her. It's terrifying. So much of my identity was tied to us. Our routines, our plans, our shared history. I don't know how to be just me. I tried playing my guitar again tonight, but my fingers felt clumsy, like they'd forgotten how to move. I used to write songs for her back when things were good. Now, the thought of playing makes my chest ache. I put the guitar back in its case and left it in the corner. Maybe I'll try again tomorrow. I've been thinking about what I want my life to look like now. I don't have a clear picture, but I got a list. It's short, practical. Find a new place to live, maybe a house share so I'm not alone. Start therapy again. Reconnect with friends I've let drift away. I've already texted a couple of old buddies just to say hey. One of them, Mike, invited me to grab a beer next week. I said yes, even though the idea of socializing feels exhausting. I need to start somewhere. The alcohol thing worries me. I've been sober from hard liquor for years, thanks to her. She was my anchor, the one who'd pull me back when I was tempted. Now that she's gone, I can feel the pull again. I went to the corner store earlier to grab some snacks, and I stood in front of the liquor aisle for a good minute just staring. I didn't buy anything, but it scared me how much I wanted to. I've got my 4-week plan, no spirits, no smoking unless it's offered. It's a start, but I know it's going to be a fight. I've also been thinking about the future, about dating again. It feels impossible right now. I can't imagine trusting someone new, letting them in. But I don't want to be alone forever. I want love, eventually. Someone who's honest, who doesn't make me question my worth. I don't know when I'll be ready, but I'm trying to believe that day will come. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on rebuilding. I keep coming back to the idea of being friends with her someday. It's a nice thought, but it feels like a fantasy. Too much has happened. Even if we could move past this, there's a part of me that will always see her as the person who broke my trust. And if she moves to another city, like I think she will, we'll probably just drift apart. That's okay. Maybe it's better that way. Tonight, I'm going to try to sleep. I haven't slept much since yesterday, and my body's starting to feel it. I've got a notebook by my bed, and I'm going to keep journaling. It helps, putting this all down. It's like I'm mapping out the mess in my head, trying to find a path through it. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm moving forward, one step at a time. The next morning, I wake up to a text from her. It's short, I'm sorry, I hope you're okay. I don't respond. I don't know if I ever will. Instead, I get up, make coffee, and sit by the window. The world outside is moving. Cars passing, birds chirping, life going on. I'm not ready to join it yet, but I'm here. That's enough for now. Over the next few days, I start to settle into a routine. I spend time with my parents, help mom in the garden, watch old movies with dad. I go for walks, long ones, letting my thoughts wander. I start to notice small things, a flower blooming in a crack in the sidewalk, the way the light hits the trees at dusk. It's not much, but it's something. It reminds me that there's beauty out there, even in the broken places. My therapy session is a lifeline. I tell my therapist everything, the whole messy story. She listens, doesn't judge, just asks gentle questions that make me think. We talk about grief, not just for the relationship, but for the version of myself I thought I'd be. She gives me homework, write down one thing each day that makes me feel alive. It's hard at first, but I start to find them. A good song on the radio, a laugh with a friend, the smell of rain. I also start looking for a place to live. I find a listing for a house share with 2 other guys, both in their 30s, both creative types. It's not far from my old apartment, which is bittersweet, but it feels like a good fit. I meet them for coffee, and we hit it off. They're laid back, kind, and they don't pry when I say I'm going through a breakup. I sign the lease a week later. Moving in feels like a fresh start, even if it's just a room with a bed and a desk. As the weeks go by, I start to rediscover pieces of myself. I pick up my guitar again, and this time, I play. It's not great, but it's a start. I write a song not about her, but about me, about surviving, about hope. I reconnect with more friends, go to a concert, even try a painting class on a whim. It's awkward, and I'm terrible at it, but I laugh more than I have in months. The cravings for alcohol come and go, but I stick to my plan. I don't buy spirits, don't smoke unless it's a rare night out. I'm proud of myself for that. It's not easy, but I'm doing it. I'm learning to be my own anchor. One night, about a month after the breakup, I'm sitting in my new room, strumming my guitar, when I realize I'm okay. Not great, not healed, but okay. I'm starting to see a future again. One where I'm not defined by what happened. I don't know what it holds, but I'm not as scared anymore. I'm ready to find out. On to the next story, the morning of my marital metastasis. With a plea deal finally reached and new details brought to light, I have put myself back into therapy to deal with my ex-husband's pedophilia-based felonies. I used to be an avid amateur writer before all of this, and have been struggling to get back into the pastime. Since restarting with a new therapist last week, I decided writing about reliving everything here would be an interesting step towards recovery and reclaiming my hobby. To set the scene, it was a brisk, sunny morning in mid-December back in 2018. The following events took place sometime after 9 a.m., which is a heinous hour to awaken a disgruntled mid-shift working healthcare professional. But I already digress. There were several boomingly insistent knocks at the front door. Those were promptly followed by even more fervent banging of his persistently impatient fist. Still groggy from staying up with my then-husband, Alex's name changed, until 5 a.m., I didn't pay much mind. If it was a package, we'd time for it later. If a solicitor, hardly worth the putting on of pants. Working till 3 a.m. Most nights made me especially uninterested in the waking world till at least double digits, also known as 10 a.m. Besides, the Sunday night before, we were both actually off, and had stayed up until 5 a.m., catching up on Ruby. Not so fun fact, I've not been able to watch an episode of it ever since. It wasn't until the 5th round of knocking boomed harshly through the old wooden door of our still very new home that I was finally evicted from unconsciousness. Checking my phone, I blearily saw the time and was filled with disgruntlement. Spoiler alert, disgruntlement would be the most positive feeling I experienced the rest of the day before I could even wipe the lingering sleep from my eyes. Hurried footfalls stomped up the stairs and burst into our bedroom. I pulled the sheet up to my chest like a damn damsel in scandalized distress, while my then-husband, who shall henceforth be titled Toomer, was already up and fastening a belt to jeans he had worn the day before. Several police officers entered our room, and before I knew it, Toomer was ushered away, and I was left alone with the lady of the law at the foot of my bed. Politely but sternly, she instructed me to get dressed. I asked if I was being taken anywhere, to which she non-committally assured me that I was not at this time. I then asked if I should dress warmly or professionally. Do I go for a t-shirt and sweatpants or slacks and a blouse? These were so very many questions plaguing my very muddled mind. I vividly remember her giving me a supportively sad smile before telling me it was cold, so something warm and comfortable. So tea and sweats it was. Next up, I was asked about any weapons or electronics in the room. I directed her to both our closets, where we each had our own gun. Those were set on the bed, empty ammo cartridges removed, and emptier ejection ports exposed. My phone, along with older models long dead in my nightstand, MP3 players, cameras, and touchpads, were scattered across the still warm sheets of our bed. After all that, I was ushered out of the room before I could see what they ransacked next. Another spoiler alert, I'd never be able to sleep on those again. Before I knew it, my life had become a scene from a dramatized true crime special. I didn't know it at the time, but at least I wasn't the star. While the cops raided our home, I sat on the couch, watching helplessly while racking my brain over what I could have possibly done to bring them here. Because of course it had to be me in trouble. I'm the troublemaker between the two of us. I always teased he was too self-righteous and far too lazy to actually do anything bad, let alone fiendishly illegal. But I had just paid all my outstanding parking tickets off that Friday. What else could I have done to warrant this? Punt, very intended. At first, Toomer was nowhere in sight. I eventually caught a glimpse of him on the front porch through a window. He was surrounded by somehow even more cops, while the rest of them were still swarming our home. Though, I have to say, it was much less trash raiding and far more politely poking and prodding about. Sometimes, they would pause to compliment me on a feature of the house, like the pocket doors or crown molding along the ceiling. Each time I couldn't take the suspense anymore, I'd borderline hysterically thank them for the compliment before asking, "So, what's happening? Why is this happening? Did I do something wrong? Am I accused of something? Are we being accused of something? Are we being taken anywhere? What's going on, and when will I start getting some answers, please?" Each time I was gently but firmly brushed off. "This is an ongoing investigation. Someone will speak to you soon. They aren't the ones who could." I'd have to continue to be patient. It wouldn't be much longer. So I continued to sit quietly but internally in very much active distress. At least my one roommate, Alexander, name also changed, but weird fact, he and Toomer shared a name sat with me, at least when he wasn't pacing. He's the unfortunate soul that answered the door to all the banging earlier, something I'm still grateful for, since when he did, he found the officers all too eagerly gung-ho, getting ready to resort to a goddamn battering ram. They asked if he was Alexander, the owner of the house. He answered that while he was an Alexander, he wasn't that one. That man was upstairs in bed with his wife. The police then had him lead part of the way before sending him to the couch to sit and wait for their confusion. After the first 2 hours of grilling Toomer on the front porch in the freezing cold, the police ushered him back inside to stand in the front hall instead. Between the human blockade of the folks in blue, we made eye contact for the first time since our bedroom door was unceremoniously slammed open. He gave me this look that felt like everything was going to be all right, that this was some sort of misunderstanding, that he was taken care of. It was then that I overheard him bragging about his experiences with the martial art Aikido and the classes he used to take back in Jersey. He was telling a story I had heard 100 times about a charismatically quirky instructor, arms up and face openly friendly towards the people detaining him in our home. And I relaxed. Because what sort of guilty person discussed martial arts with the same officers in the process of arresting him? Well, apparently, the man I married was that moronic or delusional, probably both. In hindsight, yeah, definitely both. Eventually, he was escorted outside again, and I was left to my own tumultuous thoughts until the lead detective finally called my name. He had a kind face, I remember that as distinctly as I do the warmly firm and comforting handshake just before he led me into my kitchen, as though he was the polite host. Nothing looked too rummaged through, a fact that gave me some measure of hope that everything was going to be all right. That lasted until he informed me exactly what and why they were arresting my now very ex-husband. The denial phase of my grief lasted right up until he finished explaining Toomer's accusations, their evidence. And I had a friend summarize what was written in the search warrant and affidavit. Just 4 more stages to go. The denial phase of my grief lasted right up until he finished explaining Toomer's accusations, their evidence, and I had a friend summarize what was written in the search warrant and affidavit. Just 4 more stages to go. Sitting there in my kitchen, the detective's voice was steady, almost clinical, as he laid out the charges, possession and distribution of child pornography. My stomach churned, and the room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white, trying to anchor myself to something real. This couldn't be happening, not Toomer. Not the man I'd married, the one who'd made me laugh until I cried, who'd held my hand through my grandmother's funeral. But the detective's words were undeniable, and the affidavit, when I read it later, through tears and a haze of disbelief, spelled it out in black and white, IP addresses, file names, timestamps. It was real, and it was horrific. I don't remember much of what I said after that. I think I asked if I was in trouble, if they thought I knew. The detective was kind, reassuring me that I wasn't a suspect, that they had no reason to believe I was involved. But his kindness couldn't erase the shame that was already creeping in, the sickening realization that I'd been living with a monster and hadn't seen it. How could I not have known? I'd always prided myself on my intuition, my ability to read people. But I'd missed this, the worst thing imaginable. The police left that afternoon, taking Toomer with them in handcuffs. I watched from the living room window as they loaded him into a squad car, his head bowed, his shoulders slumped. I didn't cry, not then. I was too numb, too overwhelmed. Alexander, my roommate, stayed with me, his presence a quiet comfort. He didn't ask questions, just made us tea and sat with me on the couch. I was grateful for that. I wasn't ready to talk, not yet. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, lawyers, and questions I didn't know how to answer. My parents wanted to fly in, but I told them to wait. I couldn't face them, couldn't bear the thought of their worry or their judgment. I called a friend, Sarah, who worked in legal aid, and she came over that night with a bottle of wine and a notebook. She was the one who read the affidavit for me, summarizing it in plain language because I couldn't make sense of the legalese. Each word was a knife, cutting deeper into the life I thought I'd had. Toomer had been downloading illegal material for months, maybe longer, using our home Wi-Fi, our shared space. Sarah held my hand as I sobbed, my body shaking with the weight of it all. Anger came next, hot and relentless. I was furious at Toomer, at myself, at the world. How dare he do this? How dare he taint our home, our marriage, with something so vile? I tore through the house, throwing out anything that reminded me of him. His clothes, his books, even the stupid coffee mug he loved with the cartoon dog on it. I wanted him gone, erased. But no amount of cleaning could scrub away the stain he'd left on my life. I was angry at myself, too, for not seeing the signs. There must have been signs, I told myself. The late nights on his computer, the way he'd close his laptop whenever I walked into the room. I'd chalked it up to work stress, or maybe an affair, something normal, something I could handle. But this was beyond comprehension. I stopped going to work. I couldn't face my colleagues, couldn't stand the thought of their pity or their questions. I called in sick, then took a leave of absence. My boss was understanding, but I could hear the concern in her voice. I didn't care. I needed to be alone, to process, to figure out what came next. I spent days on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I'd try to write, to get back to the stories I used to love, but the words wouldn't come. My notebook sat untouched, a painful reminder of who I'd been before all this. Bargaining crept in quietly like a thief. Maybe if I'd been a better wife, more attentive, more present, he wouldn't have done this. Maybe if I'd pushed harder for couples therapy, or noticed his late-night habits sooner, I could have stopped it. I replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for clues, for moments where I could have intervened. I even thought about visiting him in jail, just to ask why. I didn't, of course. I knew it wouldn't change anything, but the urge was there, gnawing at me. Depression hit hardest. It was like a fog, thick and suffocating, settling over everything. I stopped eating, stopped showering, stopped caring. Alexander tried to help, cooking meals I barely touched, dragging me out for walks I didn't want to take. He was a saint, but I was too lost to appreciate it. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had come to this. I felt tainted, like Toomer's crimes had marked me too. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without seeing his face, his lies, his betrayal. It was Sarah who finally pulled me out of the worst of it. She showed up one day, unannounced, with a bag of groceries and a plan. "You're not doing this alone," she said, and she meant it. She stayed for the weekend, cooking, cleaning, talking me through the panic attacks that came out of nowhere. She helped me find a therapist, a new one who specialized in trauma. I was hesitant at first. I'd been in therapy before, and it hadn't stopped this from happening, but Sarah insisted. "You're not broken," she said. "You're hurt, and you can heal." My first session with the new therapist was raw, exhausting. I told her everything, from the morning of the arrest to the plea deal Toomer had just accepted. He'd pleaded guilty to reduced charges, sparing me the ordeal of a trial, but it didn't feel like a victory. It just meant he'd be in prison for years, and I'd be left to pick up the pieces. My therapist listened, her face calm but not pitying, and when I was done, she asked me what I wanted for myself. I didn't have an answer. I hadn't thought about what I wanted in months, but her question stuck with me, a tiny spark in the darkness. Writing became my lifeline. I started small, just a few sentences in a journal, describing what I was feeling. It was messy, fragmented, but it was mine. I wrote about the morning of the arrest, the way the detective's handshake had felt like a lifeline, the look in Toomer's eyes as he lied to me one last time. I wrote about the shame, the anger, the grief, and slowly the words started to flow again. I wasn't writing stories yet, but I was writing something, and that was enough. I also started to rebuild my life, piece by piece. I went back to work, part-time at first, then full-time. My colleagues were kind, and to my relief, most didn't ask questions. I moved out of the house, it held too many memories, and into a small apartment with Alexander. He'd become my rock, and sharing a space with him felt safe, grounding. We'd cook dinner together, watch silly movies, laugh at things that weren't even funny. It was a reminder that joy was still possible, even after everything. The plea deal brought new details to light, things I hadn't known before. Toomer had been involved in an online network, sharing files with others, hiding his tracks with encryption software. The police had been tracking him for months, building their case. It was chilling to realize how calculated it all was, how he'd lived this double life right under my nose. But it also gave me a strange sense of closure. He wasn't just a man who'd made a mistake, he was someone who'd chosen this path, over and over. It wasn't my fault. It never had been. Acceptance, the final stage, didn't come all at once. It came in moments, when I laughed at a joke without guilt, when I wrote a full page without crying, when I looked in the mirror and saw myself, not him. I started to see a future again, one where I wasn't defined by his crimes. I enrolled in a writing workshop, a small step toward reclaiming my passion. The first session was terrifying, but the other writers were kind, their feedback gentle. I wrote a short story, not about Toomer, but about a woman finding her way after a storm. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I also started to forgive myself. Not for his actions, those were his alone, but for the guilt I'd carried, the belief that I should have known, should have stopped him. My therapist helped me see that I'd done the best I could with what I knew at the time. I wasn't a detective, wasn't a mind reader. I was just a woman who'd loved someone and been betrayed, and I was allowed to move on. Now, a year after the plea deal, I'm still healing. There are days when the weight of it all comes back, when I see something that reminds me of him and feel the anger flare up again. But those days are fewer, farther between. I'm writing more, not just journaling, but stories, poems, even the start of a novel. I'm dreaming again, not just about surviving, but about thriving. I want to travel, to see places I've never been. I want to fall in love again, not soon, but someday, with someone who's honest, who sees me for who I am. Alexander and I are still roommates, still friends. He's dating someone now, and I'm happy for him. Sarah checks in regularly, and we've started a tradition of Sunday brunches, just the two of us, talking about everything and nothing. My parents visit when they can, and I've started to open up to them about what happened. They don't judge, just listen, and it's a relief to know they're there. The house is gone, sold to a young couple who don't know its history. I drive by sometimes, not out of nostalgia, but to remind myself that I'm not that person anymore. I'm stronger, wiser, more myself than I've ever been. Toomer's crimes will always be a part of my story, but they don't define it. I do. Tonight, I'm sitting at my desk, a cup of tea beside me, my notebook open. I'm writing this, not just for myself, but for anyone who's been through something like this, who's felt broken and wondered if they'd ever be whole again. You will. It takes time, and it hurts like hell, but you will. I'm proof of that. And as I write, I feel a spark of the old me, the one who loves stories, who saw the world as a place full of possibility. She's still here, and she's ready to keep going.